We cannot let the poisonous ideology of anti-Semitism permeate into policy decisions that impact the lives of millions of Jews around the world. Additionally, those who dismiss 9/11 as some people who did something, are you kidding me? It was a terrorist attack. It wasn't some people doing something.
As a fellow New Yorker, I think one of the things that we should talk about here is also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America, and this is an extension of that legacy. Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body.
There is this hostility to traditional values that is seeping into the public schools today. They get this because some members of the schools, too many, and you can hear it from that side of the aisle, are obsessed with racism. The other side wants us to become a progressive group of people. And whatever progressive stands for, I would have to say it's hostility to religion and ever-growing government, where the government's more and more responsible for everything in society.
When we talk about progressive values, I can say what my progressive value is, and that is freedom over fascism. Look at these books that have already been banned due to Republican measures. The Life of Rosa Parks. This apparently is too woke by the Republican Party. Song of Solomon is unacceptable to Republican politics.
What are the Democrats so afraid of? This is about transparency for the American people. And it is long past time for Joe Biden to take into account this harmful impact of this failed far-left agenda. Whether it was canceling the Keystone XL pipeline on his first day in office, to pushing his out-of-touch and costly Green New Deal regulations, Joe Biden has fueled this inflation crisis and caused this inflation crisis working with the previous radical socialist Democrat majority.
While Republicans have labeled virtually any federal spending during the pandemic as inflationary, while railing against the child tax credit that helped babies continue to be fed and diapers on their bottoms, that help families stitch things together, while they've railed against the eviction moratoriums and the Paycheck Protection Act, Moody's Analytics found that the American Rescue Plan prevented this country from slipping into a double-digit recession. Republicans have controlled this body for almost 2 months and have not passed a single bill that would actually address inflation or cut costs from working families. But you know what Democrats did? In January, we capped the price of insulin at $35 so that everyday working families can actually get a little bit more ahead. My amendment prohibits oil and gas leasing on federal lands in a way that would increase even further our net carbon emissions.
Educate yourself on how America attained its low emissions. If you care about the air quality, you care about climate change. Natural gas is what got America there. Educate yourself on that. Go and learn. Go and learn for yourself about this.
The chair would remind all members to address their comments during the various debates to the chair.
While I cannot control the fact that the other side seems to have made the assumption that I am uneducated, one of the things that I can say, or what they may say about my worldview, one of the things that I can say is that while I may not work for Wall Street, that is true. I may not be here with the mission to increase profits for corporations. That is true. My mission here is for the well-being and dignity of our family and our planet's future, for our children's ability to live on this planet. That is what this amendment is about. I've sat here for much of today and listened to many of my colleagues, particularly those on the opposite side of the aisle, introduce amendments and legislation that conveniently benefit the fossil fuel industry while fear-mongering about things like the Green New Deal and positive climate action, to which I say, boo. We don't even need to look towards the future to understand the cost of climate change. In 2021, the federal government estimates that 20 different natural disasters that year alone cost the nation an estimated $145 billion and killed nearly 700 people. The only way to guarantee consumers reliable, affordable energy is for the United States to invest in renewable energy. It's also the only way to protect our country from increasingly devastating weather events and rising temperatures. I urge the adoption of the amendment and yield back. Don't tell me this is about a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes, and also elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body. I had a member of the Republican caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. Don't tell me this is about consistency. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what we're seeing here today is the Republican Party's attempt to take some of the most heinous legislation that we are seeing passed on the state level to attack our trans and LGBT, as well as people from marginalized communities, right to exist in schools. This flowery language of quote-unquote parental rights and freedom hides the sinister fact of this legislative text. If you notice in these arguments, they are not really discussing what is actually in this legislation. It includes 2 provisions that require schools to out trans, non-binary, and LGBT youth, even if it would put said youth in harm's way. One of the highest rates of youth homelessness is in the LGBT community, from parents who want to kick their children out in households that may be unstable or abusive. For so many children of abuse, school is their only safe place to be. I'll start my remarks today by saying how ironic it is that we spent, and Republicans spent, the entire first week of this session entangled in a fight in order for them to get the votes to secure a Speaker of the House. And the whole crux of that entanglement was, and part of it, was rules to maintain regular order in the House. Rules to maintain regular order. Because just as we go back to Schoolhouse Rock, you introduce a bill, it's supposed to go to committee, you get a markup on that committee, a hearing in that committee, a vote in that committee, and if that bill can survive a committee vote, it comes right here to the floor of this House. And we spent a whole week tied up in the beginning of this term trying to reassert that order. And then, today, one of the first acts that we have from this oversight committee is to subvert that, because perhaps they knew that this would not survive their own committee. And so it goes straight to the floor for a vote, subverting all of those arguments that Republicans were making about restoring order to this House. But let's get into the substance of this bill. Ironically, if they had gone into this order, if they had gone through regular order, they may have caught that this bill does nothing to rein in inflation, in part because in their haste to put it together, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle committed an incredibly basic drafting error that makes this bill completely unenforceable. Even if we agreed on their ends, the haste and the rush to put this together and skip committee has created a drafting error that doesn't even make this bill enforceable. But even putting that error aside, my colleagues and I seem to have wildly different definitions of what actually is considered inflationary. Republicans have controlled this body for almost 2 months and have not passed a single bill that would actually address inflation or cut costs from working families. But you know what Democrats did? In January, we capped the price of insulin at $35 so that everyday working families can actually get a little bit more ahead. And we have a lot more to go. But we don't even see a carefulness on the side of the aisle to even draft the language in this bill properly. It's not even ready for a vote. So why should we? And for that reason, I urge my colleagues to vote no on the so-called Rein-in Inflation Act. And with that, I yield to the distinguished gentlewoman of St. Louis, Cori Bush.